topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart.
Hello, and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan. I'm a diversity educator, a core alignment coach, which means I train organizations in identifying patterns of bias so that they can cultivate far more inclusive ones, which is another part of the training, which creates greater belonging and happiness, more happiness for more people. If you're interested in checking out some samples of my training options, which are tailored, you can go to my website, which is knowwhatyouwantcoaching.wordpress.com. And thank you, Kenneth Arnold, for being our ASL interpreter. It's great having you here. So today we have Madeline Do will be our guest, and the title of this show is A Gen Zer's View on Voting. I want to dedicate the next 4 shows on voting. We're coming up. I know some people have already voted. Welcome, Madeline. I'm so happy that you're here. And I know you can't represent an entire generation. But I really appreciate that you're willing to speak from your own experience. And I want to share that Madeline is a recent graduate of UC Davis and a taiko player, which I'd love to hear about. And she's from Sacramento, and she'll talk about her musical background, taiko experience, youth community organizing, and the arts, and youth voters. So welcome.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And I should thank Gregory Wada, who has been on our show before, giving us an amazing history of taiko drumming. And he knows so much about Japanese American history. It was just really educational and informative. And I would love to hear from you before we move on to hear about your organizing work. And you've been quite involved with several different organizations to keep, solidarity and keep people thinking about other people in such a mindful way. Can you tell us about, for people who didn't get to listen to Gregory's show, can you tell us a little bit taiko drumming, where it came from, and then how you got involved and your experience with it?
Yeah, definitely. It's a topic and an art form that's very dear to my heart. Gregory Wada is actually one of my mentors from UC Davis, the taiko group there. But yeah, to start off, I guess, for a very brief history and my sort of introduction into taiko. So taiko in Japanese translates to fat drum. So it's traditionally a Japanese art that makes use of drums that are made out of a hollowed out tree and skin from the leather of cows that are stretched over these hollowed out trees to create a barrel looking shape. So yeah, originally from Japan, and then fast forward, skipping a lot of history, but from its appearance to the United States, mostly came from the Issei, the first generation Japanese Americans, and their experiences. I guess with that, Oh my goodness, I'm blanking out. Forgive me, I'm a bit nervous.
No
But
worries. Take
yeah,
your
I
time.
think a lot of the history of taiko in the United States can really be traced back to those first generation workers, both agricultural and whatnot. Um, yeah, and then with the incarceration of the Japanese Americans in World War II, you get sort of the second generation Japanese Americans, the Nisei, those who are in the camps. And then when the war was over, you have the Sansei, the third generation Japanese Americans, kind of taking up taiko as a way to connect back to their heritage and their cultural history, and to bring sort of this understanding to the Asian American identity in that sense. But yeah, there's so much that we can talk about regarding taiko and Japanese American history and that correlation. So please, I recommend you do that if you have interest. But for me, I guess going to my personal background, I'm not Japanese American. I'm actually Filipino Vietnamese American. My mom is from Cebu, Philippines, immigrated here, and my father is from Vientiane, Laos, ethnically Vietnamese. So we had a lot of family displaced during the Vietnam War. And so that led to my father and his family being born and raised in Laos. And so kind of taking this Southeast Asian identity throughout my childhood. And as I grew up, I got involved with different musical instruments. So other than taiko, taiko was not my first instrument, but I first started with trumpet. I played trumpet in elementary school, euphonium, trombone, marching band, all of that. So a lot of Western-centric instruments, yeah, and Western modes of learning how to play those instruments. So that was I consider that part of my taiko background, because when I entered UC Davis, I wanted to join a group, a musical ensemble that would allow me to be physical, that would allow me to grow as a musician, and would allow me to build community, find friends through the art form, whatever I chose. And I found that taiko really represented that. The physicality of taiko, I feel like it might sound a bit cliche, but how do you say this? Like, it's the heartbeat. It really feels like your heartbeat. Yeah, I think it's a common experience that others may have as well. But yeah, I fell in love with taiko, mostly for those first reasons. And then kind of as I grew into my role as a member of the group Bakuhatsu Taiko-dan at UC Davis, that was the group I started playing with, kind of finding political identity as well. That how taiko kind of speaks to Asian American identity and political consciousness. So that's part of the motivating reason why I'm continuing. But it's something that I discovered through my time there. Did I answer everything?
Yes.
Oh
no, that's so good. That's so interesting. Okay, there's so many different parts about that.
Yes.
I want to go back to one. I know when we take a break in about 20 minutes, we'll be able to watch, for those people who are watching today, a video, and for people who can hear, they'll be listening to the music. Perhaps we'll see how physical it is. That's one thing. Every time I see a taiko part, I'm like, wow, they must work out at a gym and do Pilates every day. I cannot believe the core strength, not just of your arms and your legs, but y'all are so strong. The stamina is incredible. So I have, I'm sure when you say the physicality of taiko drumming, it means much more to you than just me as a witness. But I mean, I'm not the only one, noticing and commenting on it when we watch you all play. It's just remarkable. And I don't know if you want to say more about the physicality part before I ask you a couple
Yeah.
other questions.
And that's the beauty of it, even as a witness, even as someone just watching, feeling kind of apart from it, like you're not one with the music, you are part of that. So you're part of that energy that's being given and being shared amongst each other. So yeah, and then the physicality is just like one aspect of it. I think to some others there's the spirituality that goes with it, a headspace that you get into as well. But yeah, from a physical perspective, I can't say that we do a lot of workouts outside of our practice times. We've been trying to.
You don't need
Well,
to. You clearly don't need to.
but yeah, that's definitely one part of it that's feels a bit like release and connection. Just doing something difficult together that's physical.
Yeah, that is very, very bonding. And not to mention the difficulty of learning the music and all the different patterns that the songs that alternate and integrate. So I just would love to hear more about, and I know when we talk about the different like youth organization and taiko, the political consciousness of it. Say more about that, please.
Yeah, okay. So this goes back to kind of the 1950s in Japan, post-war movement. So it's the Allied forces occupying Japan during that time. So there's this wave of wanting to connect to being Japanese again, or a way to, like splitting away from the West. That's this kind of cultural thing that's going on post-war Japan at the moment. And so out of that comes the new style of kumi daiko, or ensemble drumming, that is mostly played here now in the States. And so that can be contributed within the United States. The birth or the popularization of that is to San Francisco Taiko Dojo, Kinara Taiko, from the Los Angeles Buddhist Temple, Senshin Buddhist Temple in Los Angeles, and then San Jose Taiko, all founded around the same time, the late 60s, early 70s. And so particularly with San Jose Taiko's birth, I think, or the two founders of, or one of the founders of San Jose Taiko, Roy Hirabayashi, and then the former artistic director, PJ Hirabayashi. Those two were are sansei, or Japanese Americans, active Japanese Americans who participated in a lot of the third world movement going on college campuses during that time in the United States. And so out of that, when you have also like the identity, like Asian American identity kind of coming out of that as well, you also have these youth activists who are also taiko players or started a taiko group who are also leaning into that identity as Asian Americans. So I think for me, learning about that history and then also taking like Asian American studies classes at UC Davis and whatnot, I think it connected and it clicked for me in a way that felt personal. I think when you read a lot about history, it feels very disconnected from yourself. And so when I learned about all of that, but through playing taiko, through being in a taiko group, I think that really grounded me in that. Yeah, so that was the grounding moment for me, probably in my second year of university. So yeah, and then from there, like learning more how taiko, and then participating in a lot more events that had taiko there, that I played at too. So
Okay, that's fascinating, and it's connecting to college campuses participating in taiko. I mean, when you were describing an event to me the other day when we spoke, it was just fascinating to think about music as a form of protest.
Mhm.
So can you just kind of describe that kind of experience, and if you want to say the particulars, feel free to say, like at least the issues,
Mhm.
um, and who you were standing in solidarity with, who the ensemble was supporting, and what you did to take political action to draw attention to an issue.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak about that. Um, so I guess at UC Davis, University of California, Davis, the taiko group there, Bakuhatsu Taiko Dan, was where when I first learned how to play taiko. And so one of my first performances with that specific group was at a Tsuru for Solidarity protest at the California Capitol in Sacramento, downtown Sacramento. And so that was organized by Tsuru for Solidarity, which is a Japanese American social justice group working to end detention sites and kind of support frontline immigrant and refugee communities, those who are mainly being targeted by like racist, inhumane immigration policies. And so one of my first performances, so not even protest, that was my first protest as well. But my first performance was for this group to protest the deportation of a man named Lam Hong Lee, who is originally from Vietnam, that has a life here in the United States. And I think, yeah, that was one kind of action that we did. Kind of going back to the history of the Japanese Americans and those with Japanese ancestry in the West Coast being forced into these sort of prison camps, essentially. In the spirit of that, being in solidarity with those who have been detained. Yes. And so that was one of the most powerful feelings I've got while playing taiko, was for events like that. Like, how can music bring a community together in solidarity to support each other? At UC Davis as well, there are a lot of other things that Bakuhatsu Taiko-dan has been involved in that I wasn't even a part of before. So even before I became a student, I feel very proud to say that that group has contributed in other ways than what I've listed. At UC Davis, there was also the UAW strikes, where a lot of the TAs and teachers there were striking for fair wages and fair treatment from the UC system. And so our group had performed at maybe 2 or 3 of those rallies. In particular, I suppose Bakuhatsu Taiko-dan, as an entity of the university, does not get any support from the university. They're called a club, but they don't receive any monetary or space support from the university. So I think in that sort of, we stand with you as a group that's been used for its kind of diversity. So, UC Davis is diverse, and then there's a photo of us. But this is like more of a give situation rather than like a give and take. So kind of resonating with those striking in that way, and also, yeah, our fellow UC Davis students. Another example of, or another political sort of rally we've been a part of, or I've personally been a part of, has been the Palestinian encampment at UC Davis that was going on around last year. we were called on to give a short performance. So there was no expectation of us to speak or anything. But as artists and as people who have ancestors who have suffered in that way or similarly, I felt like it was important for us to kind of speak as to why we were there. Like, why do we show up to these kinds of events? Like, how does a Japanese American, Asian American art or drumming group, what does that have to do with like the issues that are at hand? And a lot of it has to do with, for me personally, not speaking on behalf of the group, but creating unity and creating awareness. Taiko is loud. Taiko speaks to a lot of people just through its sound. And so just being there is an act of support and protest. For the Palestinian encampments specifically, more so referring to kind of anti-genocide, opposition to Israel governmental policy and their treatment of Palestinians and not being anti-Semitic in that state. Criticizing the state, not the people for Jewish. But yeah, even at these encampments, if folks are unaware of, there was a lot of art and a lot of bringing together events that could help educate, events that would that brought people together rather than, I think, push people away. And so having us there as kind of an art form that brings people together, I think was powerful for me in that regard. Yeah, that's kind of like a summary of how taiko specifically in this case was used as a way to be in solidarity with others at UC Davis.
Thank you. I really appreciate your words, like creating unity and using art and music to unify people, all people who are against genocide. And I also really appreciate your separating the state and government from the people. That's I know there were so many Jewish people and who are also pro-Palestinian, who are also critical of the state, and who knows that's a different thing from anti-Semitism, because we certainly don't want to support anti-Semitism. And how powerful. I love the way you spelled out, art creating unity. I'm thinking the time is flying. It's already time for a break. So this is perfect if anyone's listening or watching. We have a 6-minute video that our engineer, Rebel, will play for us now. And thank you so much. We'll be right back. I'm so curious. Before we talk about voting, how long does it take to learn a song like that? There's so much involved, like choreography and like literally jumping in the air and arms in the air with the sticks, even when you're not drumming, and shouting out phrases or words. How long would it take to learn all of that?
So I'll preface that with saying that that was the Koyasan Spirit of Children taiko group based out of the Northern California Koyasan Temple. That's in Sacramento, downtown Sacramento. And so what's great about that group that I've joined after graduating is that it's a range of ages. So you have like kind of college graduates around that age, like 20s or so, my age there. You have little kids. Some of them aren't there, but it goes as young as like 5 years old. And then you have 18-year-olds. Yeah. So as well as those who are a bit older in age, like 50s, 60s, playing taiko with us. So I cannot really say how long it takes to learn the whole piece. I would say like over a few months usually is how it goes, to not tire out the brain and to not tire out the people playing as well. But we actually learn taiko by orally, so there's no sheet music or anything like in Western percussion or anything. So when you say don, 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 ka, 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 that would equate to playing 1, 2, 3, and a 4. So in that, yeah, that's how we kind of learn and we teach. The kind of phrases that you heard us shouting out and stuff are not exactly mandatory. So it's kind of like what you're feeling in the moment. Sometimes it's usually to like give energy to each other, give energy to the audience. Sometimes it's to count, like, oh, let's shout on this fourth phrase or like this fourth count so that we know when to come in or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of it is, or a lot of it is improvisation. A lot of the solos that you just saw were essentially all improvised, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. The excitement and the enthusiasm and just wanting to holler out and sing out.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing. If anybody didn't get to see the visuals, you can find it archived on YouTube, Talk4 TV, Talk4 Media. Go check it out. It's really worth it. So let's turn more specifically to voting. And I'm assuming you know what kind of, on some shows I've asked guests, like, what kind of America do you want? Like, and are you, whichever guest I'm speaking to, are you looking at what options that each of the candidates has to offer? Like, what if voting for less Democratic or Republican, the current Republican, which is not standard Republican, I will say, it's not the conservative standard healthy Republican that we used to know currently. So I usually start by saying, what kind of America do you want, and how much have you looked into, like, as a Gen Zer, how much have you looked into voting? How important is voting? I mean, given that you have this political consciousness and you've participated in raising awareness and standing in solidarity with people from different parts of the world, I know you care. You care about society, you care about people, and you agreed to talk about voting, which means that must matter to you. So you can just start where you want, and then I'll just, go from asking you about how you feel about voting, and like, do you feel like many of your peers are also saying, yeah, we have to vote? Or are you running to people in Gen Z who are disinterested or not paying attention? Let's start with you.
Yeah, okay. With me, regarding what I want America to look like, I think I've come into consciousness, not just political consciousness, but just consciousness in general of like, what is the world around me? And like, what is capitalism? And those kind of questions have come to me. Like, it was post, so I was born in 2002. So after 9/11, during a lot of wars in the Middle East, like war on oil and stuff like that. But not really being aware of things, like things weren't really clicking, like how does this matter to me, I think. And so my earliest memories, I guess, of America as itself, like a very neutral stance. Like I don't know, my country is fine, I suppose. I don't really know what can make it better. And I think that's a lot of what people might be feeling now, perhaps. I think though, as I've gotten older, like understanding the need for tolerance, like being able to tolerate each other and different views that people might have, that like non-violent views, like views that don't harm a group or an individual, and being able to have dialogue about that. I think I've learned, and I want that for us as Americans, to be able to be in conversation with one another. Something that I can't do all the time. I'm working on it myself, but I think that's part of the America that I want. For me, I find a lot of my connection and calling through art. And so how, like I mentioned, art creates unity. And so being a part of projects that have kind of contributed to that sort of ideal and hopefully realistic goal of being able to understand each other, being able to dance and have shared joy with one another, and being able to share each other's pain. I think that's something that I would like to see as an America that's as divided as it is today.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. Being able to, like, again, have conversations as much as possible. It's not always easy. Using art as unity, which you do so well, and something that you turn to and you can do as a musician and artist, and being able to, like, I love the image of dance together, share joy together, and that you also added share pain together. That's the kind of America you want.
Yeah, I think as views and actions make it more extreme, like being able to connect with each other as human beings, I think is important. Yeah, I mean, human beings and the environment as well. Like how do we exist together, both with nature and with ourselves? Yeah. So I was an environmental science major at UC Davis, so I was taught a lot about like the theoretical applications of what we can do, like climate science and research and all of that. And so while I enjoyed it, I think a lot of the dialogue comes from like people who are not necessarily in those fields either, like people who may not know as much but want to know more. I think. Yeah, so
Wow, thank you. And do you have a sense, like, I'm just trying to think back, what if someone asked me this when I graduated from college? Like, do you have a sense of, I mean, I don't even know how big your graduating class was. Mine was pretty small, but I'm wondering, like, can you say, like, give us snapshots of what people your age are thinking, and what you heard on campus and post graduation about voting in this election, when people are so divided, and some people are just tuning out, but some people are really getting into it and making calls and campaigning and working. What would you say you saw and hear from your peers?
I see a lot of action. I think UC Davis specifically is more of like liberal in terms of political thought. And so from my peers, I consider myself kind of on the, like, oh, I don't campaign as much. And so there are people who do way more than me. And then people who are around me who like to think about this and have dialogue about it, but may not really know, like, what is the next step really. So I think most of my peers who are Gen Z have leaned towards that we need to take action. And I think that's what's interesting about like a university campus, is that you have a whole bunch of young intellectuals who want to do something with what they've learned, whether that be protesting or going out and making like legislative change and whatnot. So I think a lot of what I see is a lot of action on my peers' parts and my generation, to be honest. Yeah, I would say that.
Okay.
A lot.
So not giving up. There's a bit, I know there's been so much doubt put out there and misinformation about our system, but you're saying what you see and hear is people like not giving up, but wanting to take action, even if, I think part of being American is to constantly want to improve upon it and make it grow and make it get better and keep working towards a more perfect union. But so that spirit, it sounds like you're seeing that. It might be different description words, but you see people saying not giving up and like, I want to maybe influence policy or make change.
Yeah, exactly as you put it. You worded it very well. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's what it is. That is what I'm seeing. And then it's kind of interesting to reconcile that with a lot of what you learn, especially as an environmental student, is a science student, is depressing things about the environment, and then the policies being enacted that don't really help the environment. And that's just one scenario. But then to have what you learned in class kind of depressing, and then having kind of the opposite, like seeing the opposite reaction of your peers, like my peers wanting to essentially, like, kind of cliche, like make the world a better place in kind of whatever capacity they can. Not just environmental science students, but I think a lot of the people who I've met through UC Davis, and even like when I studied abroad in Japan for a little bit as part of UC Davis, like the UC program. And like even seeing that there, it's like, oh, okay. So young people around the world, hopefully, like we together can make change in that way. And that was just uplifting in that way.
That is very uplifting, and that's very encouraging too. And I know that so many young people were like, there's that climate change challenge, and we still haven't seemed to gotten a way to take away the powerful control that NRA or gun lobbying has. Like, we still have so much work to do to make real practical laws that help prevent gun violence, for one thing. And I know there are a lot of advocates in your generation who are really dedicating time to that. It's just so inspiring because the climate change, and then some people interested in political change, whether it's working on what are we going to do about the Electoral College, or can we take at least this amount of money out of campaigning and finances. There's so many people in your generation who are super inspiring, and I'm glad you were surrounded by it and are a part of keeping hope alive, not giving up, and just like using the education and the drive. And not everybody has to go to college or be formally educated. There's so many people who have the passion and the drive to make positive change, whether or not they choose to or have access to, a college degree. But I just give lots of credit. And I know I have come from a big family, and there's more than one generation in my sibling family. And I one of them from the Boomer generation was apologizing to Gen Z generation, like, I'm so sorry. So we didn't mean to do this. There were a lot of us Boomers were trying to be activists and trying to make good changes then, and hopefully we did have some positive influence. But hope you're not overwhelmed by what's left to clean up here and more.
Yeah, I will say when it comes to like candidates, like vetting candidates, like for voting and stuff, I voted in the 2020 election, and then I voted by mail, which is more convenient for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just like how do you put your trust into someone? I guess
Yeah.
as in America, I think that's been coming up a lot. I think in voting dialogue with me and my peers, like stuck between kind of a rock and a hard place, and like how do you build a candidate or find a candidate that really represents like that can really make the change that you want to happen. So a lot of it feels out of our control, not
Mm-hmm.
going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
I think just yeah, like,
That's really well put.
yeah.
I think I feel like that's true for everyone I know. Like no one's perfect, and I know the phrase "the lesser of two evils" comes up for a lot of people. Oh, there's some beautiful photographs of you. it, of Wow, that's lovely. I don't know if you want to say anything about those. We have it like 4 minutes left. Do you want to comment on the photos before I say more about voting?
Well, I guess real quick, those photos are of me playing taiko. That was why I
Yeah.
included them. And one
Yeah.
of them was two of them are from the Davis Cherry Blossom Festival, which was founded by Gregory Wada, started in 2016, as a way to kind of bring unity, share Asian American joy in the arts. So that just quick little thing there.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, the Cherry Blossom Festival. That's every May, right? In
Um,
Davis?
every April in
Oh,
Davis.
every April. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm associating it with cherry blossoms
Yeah.
blooming. Yeah, that's a beautiful event. If you're anywhere near Northern California, find Cherry Blossom Festival in Davis. It's usually at Sudwork Brewery, which is I have a bias towards because my nephew's has a lot to do with the community-oriented events.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very generous. So, given that we have a couple more minutes, I wondered, like, if you have a platform to speak to people in your generation, and we're coming over this election, I know some people feel like there's a lot at stake. There's a big difference in this particular time. We don't usually have this wide gap. If you vote left or right, nobody's perfect. There's, definitely, it's rare. I can't even think of a person I know who thinks I agree with every single issue of who I'm going to vote for. But do you have any words of encouragement for whether they're from Gen Z or any generation, anybody listening who you have a thought that might encourage people to really think about it, think about voting rather than walk away from this opportunity that honestly worldwide it's really rare. It's really, really rare to have some voice.
Yeah, I think just broadly, like as a diverse people, as Americans, like our right, like as Americans, is to have policies that kind of represent and protect like that diversity that is like us and our thoughts. And so I think voting is definitely one way to go about it, to ensure that you do have those rights and you do have like people looking out for, oh, I don't know, that might be a stretch, people looking out for you in the government, but yeah, things that can, yeah, build towards hopefully what you want in the future. Yeah.
Things that can build towards what you want in the future, hopefully. Yeah. My bias is I do feel like there are some government programs that are really important, like healthcare. Like if you care about healthcare, it's pretty clear who you should vote for.
Yeah. Education.
Education, reproductive rights, which is far, far, far more than we understood. How pro-choice is so much truly a health issue, which our whole country's getting greater education about voting itself, protecting voting, protecting people who come here from other countries who have helped build up this country, who keep this country going. Anyway, I'm throwing in my biases.
I agree.
So, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'll just wrap up by thanking you so much, Madeline Do, and thanks for your beautiful music and art and helping create unity for more people through music and art. Thank you to our ASL interpreter, Kenneth Arnold, who's just always so positive and teaching me things every week. Thank you to our engineer, Rebel, who's always on top of everything we need, and to our producer, Dean K. Piper. And to the viewers and listeners, thank you so much. Please tell people about It's Your Voice. The next 3 shows, we have 3 more Wednesdays before voting November 5th in the United States of America. And we have more to think about and talk about listening for anybody who's on the edge or disillusioned. Keep tuning in. And thank you all. We'll see you next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Talk4TV and W4CY.com. And may we all have enriching conversations in diversity this week.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate